Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Franke, Associate Publisher with Corporate Counsel Business Journal, and we're thrilled to be working with our partner Tolkien today to present today's webcast, The State of Legal Technology Stack 2025. Our distinguished speakers are Connie Brenton, co-founder and CEO of LegalOps.com, Jeffrey Franke, co-founder and General Counsel of LegalOps.com, and Matt Aronson, Senior Director of Product Marketing for Tolkien. We encourage you to ask questions using the orange Q&A icon, as well as fill out the survey using the pink clipboard icon. If you're interested in the presentation or the State of Legal Operations Tech Stack survey that we'll be speaking about today, you may download them using the blue paperclip icon. And all of these icons are located at the bottom of your screen. And just a reminder, the opinions of our panelists today are theirs alone and not necessarily reflecting the views of their employers. And now it's my pleasure to pass it off to Matt. Matt, take it away.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you everybody for joining us today to explore what I think you'll find are some interesting and in some cases genuinely surprising insights about where legal operations technology stands right now, and more important, where it's headed. So we surveyed 300 legal and legal ops leaders, and what they told us, I think, challenges many assumptions about legal technology today. So I'm looking forward to getting into it here. For those who don't know Tonkean, we're the enterprise orchestration platform trusted by companies like Google, OpenAI, Workday, and Cisco. We help legal ops teams orchestrate processes across their entire tech stacks and deploy AI agents safely and at scale. But today's discussion is about the broader state of legal technology, and we will have some insights to share that I think will resonate regardless of what tools you're using. So to talk a little bit about the methodology here, we partnered with WBR Research to survey 300 senior executives worldwide. Did everybody see the slide change here? Are we on the methodology slide? Can we confirm?
Matt, you need to share your screen.
That would help, wouldn't it? Okay.
Just a couple minutes.
Yeah. Okay, well, sorry about that, folks. Now you should see a methodology slide.
Yep, confirmed, we all see it.
Excellent. So, like I said, we partnered with WBR Research. 300 senior executives worldwide were in our sample, looking at the industry breakdown, a very rich cross-section, telecommunications, pharma, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, tech, retail, professional services, 16 sectors in all, just about equally represented across our sample. This breadth ensures our findings reflect true market conditions, not sector-specific quirks. You can also look at company size here, about a third in the 1,000 to 5,000 employee range, 20% in the 5,000 to 10,000 range, 11% 10,000 to 20,000, and another full third have more than 20,000 employees. So we're talking about substantial, enterprise scale organizations dealing with real complexity, not startups figuring things out for the first time. Geographically, we got some great global representation here. Only about 16% from North America. And as you can see, a pretty wide distribution. This is based on company headquarters specifically around the world. The role breakdown, also important here, about equal representation among GCs and chief legal officers, corporate counsels, legal ops professionals, and compliance and risk management folks. About 60% are manager or director level, 29% VP or above. This is a mix of strategic leadership and operational practitioners, right? That gives us both the vision and reality, I think, of legal ops today. So to dive into what we found here, I want to start with the current state of legal tech stacks, because this sets the stage for everything else. And I'll just say once again, before we go into the data here, this is a preview, really, of the State of the Legal Tech Stack ebook that will be arriving in your emails shortly. Please do check out the full study as well. This is not all of the data, not all of the insights, sort of a teaser, so to speak. So we would love to to get the full report into your hands. But let's dive in here. The data show that the average legal department is now managing between 8 and 10 separate legal specific systems. So not total systems, just legal specific ones. Contract review and AI contract analysis tools lead at 66% adoption. Let's see. Document management at 59%, matter management at 57%, legal intake platforms at 56%, CLM systems at 51%, and on it goes: workflow automation, compliance tools, e-discovery, outside counsel management. The list is pretty extensive here, but the implication is pretty profound. We've essentially solved the functionality problem in legal ops, right? Need contract analytics, there's a tool. Matter management, multiple options. E-discovery, take your pick. The bottleneck is no longer about capability. It's about making these tools work together in a coherent way that actually improves how legal operates. Here's where we're seeing a genuine strategic shift. Our data shows 52% of organizations now have dedicated intake platforms, purpose-built platforms designed specifically for legal intake request management. Another 40% are still routing through generic ticketing systems like ServiceNow or Jira. Only 4% use custom portals. 3% are using matter management or CLM for all their intake. Fewer than 2% are using basic forms from SharePoint or similar. I think what's remarkable here is 0 respondents reported using email or manual processes exclusively as their primary intake method. 0. And while this is the first year that we have run this survey, I suspect that if we had started 10 years ago and tracked answers to that question over time, that we would have seen a progression toward that 0, right? This investment in proper intake, I think, represents a maturation in how legal ops is thinking about service delivery. Teams are recognizing intake as the front door to legal, the first impression, the experience setter, and they are investing accordingly. Speaking of experience, here's perhaps our most sobering finding. Only 11% of the respondents say that their stakeholders are very satisfied with legal processes. The vast majority, 84%, live in somewhere satisfied land, with 5% actually unsatisfied. And in an era where every other business function is delivering consumer-grade digital experiences, I do think somewhat satisfied is a bit of a warning sign. Legal is meeting basic needs, but not really delighting anybody, right? We're functional, but not exceptional. Looking at the visibility metric, only 25% of teams provide full real-time visibility with self-service tracking. The majority, 68%, provide partial visibility, which usually translates to, email us and we'll check for you. Another 7% provide limited visibility, where stakeholders must proactively request updates. Think about what partial visibility means from a stakeholder perspective. They submit a contract request and they enter a waiting game. Is it being reviewed? Who's working on it? When will it be done? This uncertainty creates anxiety and drives those time-wasting, just checking in emails that plague legal teams. The bottleneck data is revealing. 36% of teams say that they rarely hit bottlenecks, which sounds positive until you kind of realize the implication of the flip side of that, which is 64% are hitting them with some regularity, 48% occasionally, 16% often, they say. Nearly 2/3 are experiencing regular bottlenecks despite all of this technology investment. And that is, I think, problematic. So the really telling stat here, though, is when we asked how many different systems stakeholders have to log into to complete a legal request, only 14% said one system, 31% said two, a majority, 55%, said 3 or more systems. So you think about that user journey for just a moment. Submit a request through your intake platform, jump to DocuSign for signatures, check the CLM for the right template, pop into Slack for approvals, maybe hit the matter management system to track progress. Each transition is a potential point of failure, a chance for something to get dropped, a source of frustration. It is an obstacle course that creates the very bottleneck. um, that we're trying to eliminate. When we asked legal teams themselves about their biggest operational pain points, the results paint a clear picture of systemic integration challenges. The top three frustrations: 43% cite difficulty coordinating approvals across departments, 39% point to inadequate reporting and analytics, 35% struggle with lack of visibility into matter status. Also high on the list here, inconsistent contract review processes, data inaccuracies, outside counsel invoice management delays, redundant tasks, and poor collaboration between legal and business units. If you notice what they all have in common, they're not tool problems. They're connection problems, right? And excuse me, I did not progress the slide here. That is my fault. So I'll leave this up for a minute to make sure that everyone can get a handle on this data. This is what happens when your contract review system doesn't talk to your matter management platform, which doesn't sync with your analytics dashboard, which can't pull data from your e-billing system. The tools work fine in isolation. It's the handoffs and data transfers between them, among them, that create the pain. So moving on to integration and interoperability, a critical finding here, I think, about the state of integration. When asked about integration with other departments' systems and suites, finance, HR, procurement, IT, so forth, only 25% report being fully integrated with seamless data sharing and no manual workarounds required. The vast majority, 68%, are somewhat integrated. Some workflows are seamless. Others require manual steps. About 7% say that they're not integrated or not very integrated at all. When we ask about the ease of collaboration, only 22% said that it's totally seamless. The majority, 65%, said somewhat seamless, but with occasional delays or communication gaps. 13% said not seamless at all, with frequent bottlenecks that hinder collaboration. And the message couldn't be clearer here, right? Fragmentation is the enemy of efficiency. It's not just about efficiency, though. It's about effectiveness, employee experience, and ultimately legal's ability to be a true strategic partner rather than a necessary hurdle. So let's get into an exciting section here. Let's talk about AI. I think this is where the data genuinely surprised us. And, if we're talking about tech stack in 2025, AI is really an essential lens to put on how people are thinking about their technologies and technology investments. I think the headline that should grab everyone's attention here, 60% of legal teams are already using AI agents that autonomously complete complex work, not piloting, not testing, but in production, with only 9% report no AI use whatsoever. Now, I will caveat this somewhat. There are limitations to how you can sort of present choices and data in surveys like this, and I think next year we'll perhaps clarifying the question a little bit more. With all of the hype around AI agents across technology and SaaS categories right now, I also think there's a lot of confusion about what really constitutes an autonomous AI agent versus something that's more like an AI-supported tool or capability. We would say to be an AI agent, it has to be able to not just automate a task, but to take an objective and to break that objective down into discrete tasks and then execute on those tasks in sequence and coordinate a kind of final product. There are definitely vendors out there talking about AI agents whose technologies do not meet that bar. But I think regardless, 60% using capabilities that they would describe as AI agents is really, really notable here. The specific use cases that came up in the survey, I think, show thoughtful, risk-aware adoption. The top applications, 51% use AI to assist employees with FAQs about policies and procedures. I have talked to enough folks from enterprise legal teams who tell me that answering the same 5 questions takes 20, 30% of their time. That's not data from the survey. That's anecdotal from me. But I kind of nodded my head when I saw this one. 51% for triaging and routing intake requests. 49% have AI-powered capabilities handling recurring tasks like NDA generation. Nearly half are using AI to flag out-of-policy requests. 45% to generate contract drafts. 41% for predictive analytics. This is not experimental anymore, right? This is production deployment at scale. And legal teams, historically, one of the more conservative functions when it comes to new technology adoption, is arguably leading the charge for enterprise AI adoption. And if we want to ask how this is happening, one speculative reason is, I think it's partly necessity. The pressure to do more with less has become so acute that teams are willing to embrace AI despite, in some cases, some very real concerns about risk and governance. Of course, barriers do persist. The top challenge, barriers to AI adoption, top challenge cited at 46% is the complexity of implementation. And that, I think, directly relates to the integration problem that we already framed up here. How do you deploy AI effectively when your data is scattered across 10 disconnected systems? 45% worry about data privacy and security. I think very valid given the sensitivity of legal data. 38% have compliance or ethical concerns. 35% lack executive sponsorship. It will be interesting to see how that one trends over the next few years as we keep doing this research. Roughly a third worry about data accuracy, consistency, and appropriate guardrails. But I think what's notably not a major barrier, budget constraints, are only cited by 10% here. Capacity constraints within legal ops by just 6%. This isn't about money or headcount anymore, right? It's about making AI work safely and effectively within fragmented, complex environments. So when we asked, and I partly obscured our headline there, apologies. When I asked what AI capabilities teams want most for their legal tech tools, the number one answer at 61% was integration with existing internal systems for seamless process orchestration. So not fancier AI, not more sophisticated natural language processing, just AI that actually works with what we already have. 48% want autonomous agents that can complete tasks and projects. 43% want multi-agent architectures. About 35% want AI that's accessible within collaboration platforms. For what it's worth, only 14% prioritize comprehensive reporting and audit trails. I tend to interpret that less as that's not important to people and more as a sort of recognition that is table stakes, right? For any software, right? So the message, though, I think is unmistakable. AI is only as transformative as the infrastructure that it runs on. Without integration, without orchestration, you're limiting what AI can accomplish. So given all these challenges and opportunities, what are teams focusing their efforts on for this year and beyond? The top operational goals for the year ahead tell us a clear story about priorities. 40% are focused on increasing automation of routine tasks. No surprise there. That's been a priority for years. But look at what's right behind it at 38%. Improving orchestration of processes across applications, data sources, people, and teams. The orchestration focus is relatively new, I think, and critically important. Teams are recognizing that automation in isolation has limited value. You need orchestration to connect automated processes to ensure handoffs work smoothly, to maintain visibility across the entire workflow. Also high on this list, 35% want to reduce cycle times, 34% to improve intake processes, with smaller percentages focused on AI adoption, stakeholder experience, and compliance. But you sort of notice a common thread for how these priorities interconnect. Better orchestration enables more effective automation, which reduces cycle times, which improves the intake experience, which enhances stakeholder satisfaction, which helps the legal team deliver better value for the business. It is all connected. When we drill into technology investment priorities specifically, the data are even more revealing. So 50% are focused on improving legal intake and orchestration. Essentially half of all respondents making this their top tech priority, which is a pretty remarkable consensus. 41% want to enhance analytics and reporting dashboards. They want better visibility into what's actually happening. 31% are enabling AI-driven compliance monitoring, about 30% automating workflows, 29% focused on reducing manual work. Interestingly, only 15% prioritize direct integrations across legal systems like CLM and matter management. And to me, this suggests that teams have either solved these problems or, in many cases, have given up on trying to integrate legacy systems directly and are instead looking for orchestration layers that can wrap around and work across them. So I will leave you with 4 signals that define this moment in legal operations. First, we see widespread investment but fragmented use. Nearly every major legal tech category is in play. Contract review at 66%, matter management at 57%, CLM at 51%, but only 25% report seamless integration across tools. Second, intake experience is pivotal but inconsistent. So while 52% rely on dedicated intake and orchestration platforms, 40% are still routing work through generic ticketing systems that don't provide that same kind of guided and tailored experience. And stakeholder satisfaction at only 11%, very satisfied, strongly correlates with the quality of that intake experience. Third, AI has serious momentum, but lack of connection is the bottleneck. 60% adoption of AI agents is remarkable for a function known for conservative technology adoption. Yet implementation complexity and data privacy concerns, both around 45%, rank as top barriers. So both are directly related to fragmentation. Fourth, the priorities for the year ahead concentrate on orchestration. So improving intake and orchestration at 50%, enhancing analytics dashboards at 41%. These outrank CLM refreshes and other traditional priorities. Teams recognize that connection and visibility are the prerequisites for everything else that they want to achieve. The data tell us that legal operations is entering what we might call its orchestration era. The teams that will succeed won't be those with the most sophisticated individual tools or even the most advanced AI. They'll be the ones who figure out how to make everything work together, creating seamless experiences for stakeholders, enabling AI at scale, and finally achieving the visibility and efficiency that we've been chasing for decades. So with that, another plug for the full ebook. We'll be sending it out to everybody. Detailed findings, industry breakdowns, practical recommendations for building your 2025 roadmap. Again, really appreciate everybody joining today to hear this research, and excited to progress to our panel and hear your questions.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think we can certainly all agree that 300 global respondents is pretty amazing. But one of the things that stuck out was only 11% of stakeholders said they were very satisfied with their legal tech. So I thought we'd kind of start off the conversation with, do the complications and frustrations that we're seeing surprise you at all? And if so, why? And why not? Do you reckon these underlying issues from which these responses stem, why are they so hard to solve? Jeff, let's start with you.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is, as noted in here, is just connecting disparate systems, right? One of my big takeaways from this set of data, but actually precedes the data too, is we live in a different world, right? For the longest time, we've talked about doing more with less, but these days we're really focused upon doing more of more complex work. So getting rid of all of the mundane, repetitive types of work. And Matt, you flagged that one, that using chatbots, for example, to get rid of frequently repeatable questions is critical. So, I think people are implementing technology. They're getting the budgets, because in a world where you have to do more complex work and you're not going to get a lot more budget, you're not going to get more headcount. You've got to solve that somewhere. So technology is still the roadmap to scale, but dealing with disparate systems, especially when you don't have great intake, it's a real challenge. And I think these days, while a lot of bigger legal departments are getting the kind of tech support to try to do some of the connectivity, with the advent of AI agents and a great intake as a starting point where you can plug into your Slack, your basic email, and all your other systems by which internal teams communicate. That's really a foundational change that I think everybody's working their way through right now, even at the expense sometimes of concerns about privacy, et cetera.
Yeah, let me jump in here, because one of the other things that we're seeing, and it is very surprising to me, is legal has traditionally been the most cautious, and we are no longer seeing that the IT organizations oftentimes are holding back. And I think this is going to drive a different way of working internally, as well as how legal services are delivered.
Yeah, let me jump onto that. I think one of the things that we're seeing, again, in a world of greater complexity with more challenging issues, legal's got to step into the breach more quickly. And the failure to be able to respond to those big matters rapidly, thoughtfully, and effectively is a bigger risk than being conservative about your technology platform and not getting there. So the risk profile is changing from I'm worried about my technology to I'm worried about not getting to that compliance issue, not addressing that potential litigation issue, et cetera. And again, that's where, we talk about intake here, and logically so, as a critical first step, but the other two pieces that are equally and parallel bound by this is triage and right sourcing. If you don't have your intake, you can't get to triage and right sourcing. And those are critical in an environment, again, more complex matters, no more budget. You got to make sure you've got the right resources handling the right matters.
Yeah, let me jump on this too, because, the data is showing that I think 11% are very happy with legal, 83% are somewhat happy. I think that is a huge improvement from 5-10 years ago. When we first came in, it was a turnaround situation at my last company, and we were known as the Department of No. We had one of our only documents was the 9 nines, 9 things that you cannot do. We did not enable the business at all. And so that shift is fairly dramatic. There's only 5% in the data that are unhappy with legal. The other thing that I think is happening is the entire legal ecosystem is starting to leverage AI. And it started with the law firms getting on board quite early. So their innovation teams are growing. They're testing a number of AI technologies. And so that's one thing. And then the second is the business is pushing the use of AI in a way that legal just has to keep up. I just got together with my old GC last weekend, and he said, yeah, we're testing probably 5 or 6 AI technologies right now, and I have put it in the hands of people in my department, and he said, and I'm creating crack heads, because once they start using the AI technology, they just want more and more and more and more. So I think that coupled with the fact that AI is changing things so fast, and that legal also, according to, and rightfully so, is kind of the hub of what kind of privacy and compliance policies need to go in place first, has put legal really into the spotlight around this huge technology transformation that we're all experiencing.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense. And Connie, you and Jeff have been at the forefront of strategy and technology innovation in legal operations for years. Aside from the AI and risk profiles that we kind of talked about and we'll talk about later, when you look at these responses, what stands out to you most? Connie, why don't you start?
There are a couple of things. One, it's obviously this is a global set of data, because we have contracting at the top of all of these lists. E-signature is like at the bottom, and e-discovery is almost non-existent. I think that's an indication of where the money gets spent in the U.S. versus where it gets spent globally. It's not surprising that intake is at the top of the list. It has a very high ROI. Implementation is quite easy. There's not a lot of change management. You don't have to clean data. It's quick. And I do also think that it is not surprising that now, finally, the legal department themselves are becoming frustrated with the bottlenecks. There are very few legal departments now that run without any type of technology. You know what is a little bit surprising to me is the data shows 8 to 10 technologies. I think that's low. I think that's very low. And when my last company, when we left, we had 30 technologies, and that probably will start to decrease as we start to be able to orchestrate integration amongst the different technologies. So a couple things were surprising to me as I looked at the data.
You know, I think for me, one really striking common thread was the growing sophistication, seemingly, of legal ops teams. More are thinking in terms of systems instead of tools and silos. It reinforces how the challenge has evolved, right? It's less about, do we have a CLM? Do we have e-billing? It's more about, how do these pieces work together? And you know, encouragingly, certainly for us, there's more appetite for no-code solutions and configurability, the ability to empower ops teams to adapt workflows without being quite as dependent on IT. And I think, you know, the consistency across industries, and the ebook has some more sort of crosstabs on you know, breaking some of these data down. That coordination and visibility remain sort of the biggest barriers to scale.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Matt. And the other thing is that our data traditionally has been dirty. And so just getting the data structured in a way that we can then leverage it has been a challenge. And with the use of AI, that process is getting sped up. That will be a less and less of a bottleneck going forward.
Excellent. Jeff, I think Connie, you just mentioned, and Matt, you mentioned that legal departments are utilizing 8 to 10 technologies. When we look at the investments in this new technology that legal ops teams have already made, Are you surprised to see how widespread the use of these platforms are?
No, I think we've been on a journey for a long time, right? We've kind of started off 40 years ago with legal departments being just a general counsel and nothing more, no legal ops, not even lawyers, really, legal teams. So, going from 40 years ago, one person, to departments now being upwards of 2,000 people, right? Those are real size law firms that are running within a legal department. And it's part of the reason that we're seeing operations proliferate, and quite frankly, a bit of an ongoing struggle with what does operations mean and how do you do it? How do you do that optimally? How do you integrate it? So technology comes along logically from that. I would add that Connie and I have been huge proponents of automated workflow since the earliest days. And as Matt said, low code, no code solutions are critical to that. And again, running solutions across the department and from intake through delivery, whether that's CLM or what have you, really a key to scaling. And now that it's there, I'm not surprised. I think we're also seeing a change in what is legal operations. Who are these people? Right? There are three competencies to this. One of them is business. One of them is law. You got to know what you're delivering. But the third one is technology. And I think legal leaders, GCs, people are pushing their teams to have competency there or give them access to IT to try and make this work. I do think we're still at early days in the implementation of technology. I will also comment that I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised to see only 11% be delighted. I don't think I'd want to see my stakeholders be absolutely delighted with legal, because that probably means I've got too much, right?
That's a great point.
It's an expensive resource, and I need to make sure that I'm addressing what I need to address and nothing more. And again, to automate, right? To automate everything that I can, whether it's chatbots, self-service on contracts, and more importantly, and this is where intake is critical, one of the key pieces to triage is determining what you shouldn't be doing, right? Too often times, legal departments are doing work. I think, Connie, you got stats on that. I'll let you comment on it, but doing work that shouldn't be done. And intake allows you to figure out, okay, here's a percentage that we're not even going to look at.
Yeah, intake is not just about triage, it's also about deflection, right? So being able, with AI tools especially, being able to identify things that are out of policy or out of scope and provide more context and in some cases turn the person away, right?
Well, it also allows for self-service. So the data talks about what's being measured, what are the KPIs. So we had a very forward-thinking general counsel and legal department, and we talked about how much was high touch, low touch, and no touch. Those, I think, should be in everybody's KPI stack. The other thing, and Jeff, you alluded to it, that not very long ago, legal departments were here to guard the company. There's a whole new thought process around what legal departments, the expectation of the C-suite is with the legal department. So now we guard and we also guide the company and we enable the business while also maintaining that guard. So that's what you're talking about on that 11%.
Yeah, I would add to that is that the role of the general counsel has changed radically, right? To your point, Connie, it's about driving strategy. It's about trying to find a competitive advantage for the company. So with that change in the role, the C-suite, as you noted, is looking for something different and something more. And GCs need to be able to scale in a way that's different these days. Not just their teams, but the GCs need to be able to, and they need to have access, as you highlighted, data and understanding what their teams are doing. And if you don't have that data and information across the platform of your legal department to know how your IP teams and what your IP teams are doing and to know that offhand, and not just through monthly reports, but through in the moment technologies, you've got a problem. And certainly, you wouldn't go to finance and expect your data to be a month out of date, right? You're not going to go to your HR teams. So what we're talking about is being able to access real-time data to allow you to let leadership know what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you're addressing the most critical issues.
Yep. The conversation's fundamentally different. I mean, we can all go to how quickly are we turning around agreements. It is very recent that we had enough data and technology to even deliver that. And then that goes also to we're enabling the business. The quicker we can turn those contracts, the more we impact and enable the business.
Well, it's not just contracts though, right? I mean, those in the know will highlight sales deal velocity as an absolute critical driver, but it's true across the board. Right? In a world of incredible complexity that we have right now, and not just complexity, but just sheer chaos, being able to address compliance issues, identifying critical litigation matters, identifying which matters you're going to focus on for patent, the trademarks that you do and don't want to do. You've got to not only do those at scale, but you have to do them with rapidity and identify what the focus is going to be. Businesses have to just move faster. And that doesn't even speak to the issues around compliance, right? One massive screw up in compliance, you could be out of business or at a minimum massively impact your stock price in just minutes.
And enable to,
Right.
in order to enable the business and to provide this kind of data, to Matt's point, you have to be able to integrate with other systems across the enterprise.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because if you looked at the top 4 on the list, Matt, the first one was not actually CLM, it was actually contract analysis. CLM was actually 4th on the list, which is actually very surprising, as important as contracts are. We're still at a point where we're in an incredibly fragmented environment for CLM solutions. And teams have kind of, for the moment, jumped all the way forward to, okay, I don't know if I have a great end-to-end solution to implement right now, but I can at least tackle some of the elements of that. And again, knowing what your key issues are up front allows you to utilize those tools to get at what's most critical globally.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think we should handle now the 600-pound gorilla in the room. Since we talked about almost the entire legal ecosystem adopting AI, I believe what they say 60% of folks are adopting AI agents. How are we surprised by this? Are we thrilled by this? How do we feel about this?
I have to, first of all, I have to jump on that one, Jennifer. I think it's an 800-pound gorilla, unless that gorilla's become a lot more svelte over time.
Oh, maybe.
I think we're not surprised by that. I think that that globally AI is on everybody's minds, right? You can't turn on the television or get on the internet and not hear about AI everywhere. People use it for every aspect of their lives these days, from your phone for editing, photos, I mean, you name it. But it also is something that is accessible. And I would say that the AI platforms are doing a good job of making it useful in a lot of different contexts. And companies like Tonkean are implementing it in a way that oftentimes is invisible to you, so you don't have to be an expert, it's just there. But in other cases, it does allow you to scale quickly and solve problems. I'm not that surprised that it's there. I do think that the data point that we saw about the number of participants using it being that high, we didn't get what they're using it for, right? A lot of that may be very simple AI solutions. and a lot of it is integrated components by providers, all of which are highly useful, especially for integrating across your different systems. And I'll just end with this. So we completed Running Legal Like a Business 2025 about a month ago, and we had an amazing presentation by a technology leader from Google, and Bob Haskins, and he's talking about how they're implementing agents across their entire tech stack, from intake through triage, all the way through completion of matters, and then circling it back into their chatbots and their intake, so that the entire system is constantly learning and improving and driving efficiencies. People are seeing that the future of the legal tech stack, developing your architecture, you've got to have AI in that, fighting through what that means. But the most advanced legal departments are like, okay, this changes the game for me.
I also think that the fact that it's changing so quickly has changed our mindset. So it wasn't but 6-7 months ago that an event, and we were on a panel, and I suggested, let's ask how many people in the room are using AI. And the first question they asked was, how many of you are using AI every month? I about died, because I'm like, every month. Now, if you ask that question, it's how many times are you using it a day? And that was not very long ago. There also have been some pretty radical changes just this week, right? OpenAI put up a new browser day before yesterday. We have a MCP, which is kind of the USB for connecting different types of AI. It's that model context protocol. And so if you're not using it every day, you're falling behind quickly. It's moving so fast now that 2 weeks equal, it's kind of like dog years. 2 weeks is 2 years.
Hey, Matt, can you comment on the different ways that even just Tonkean is leveraging AI and AI agents? Because we use AI agents a bit ubiquitously, but there's different levels of complexity there. Maybe you can comment on some of the ways that Tonkean, you did earlier, but love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, there's really two ways to think about AI agents with Tonkean specifically. One is, we do have a library of out-of-the-box agents that you can, connect your systems to and implement fairly simply. But we also have an agent builder, which really democratizes the deployment and administration of agents to the extent that, and I often say when I talk to customers and prospects, if you can write a prompt, you can build an agent in Tonkean, because so long as your workflows are defined, giving it a purpose, giving it instructions, connecting it to knowledge sources, connecting it to specific skills, is something that someone who actually is close to the process can do by themselves, hands on keyboards, within a governance structure of top-down rules and restrictions and policies that are overlaid coming from IT and leadership. But in terms of sort of the different ways AI agents can offer support, one is sort of that front door for requesters in terms of being able to understand users' intent and then either fully automate simple processes like, okay, I need an NDA for XYZ, or at the very least triage and route it to the right people who need to review and approve. It can, carry out end-to-end processes around, we need to generate an MSA or a statement of work. We need to review this contract from a vendor and autonomously identify the potential red flags and snags before we send it to the right folks who are meant to go approve it. On the procurement side, We have an AI agent that will carry out sourcing projects end to end based on your need, your criteria, and the business context that is sort of imbued into it in the configuration. But really, the sky's the limit. I think the biggest gains in this generation of AI agents compared to the sort of previous generation of AI chatbots is that you have an agent that can be a participant and connects systems and people, as opposed to a chatbot that can convey some information and maybe route people, but doesn't take action across systems.
One of the things
really
I think
curious. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, let me just a quick comment on that. I think one of the things that's really interesting, Matt, is that we have for a long time had a lot of built-for-purpose types of technologies within legal, and it's created a very fragmented infrastructure. Many of those tools are very good at what they do, but they are disparate. Now you've got to deal with APIs and other arguably more advanced solutions to connect them, and most people don't bother. In a world where people want to move away from built-for-purpose solutions, somewhat ironically enough or appropriately enough, what you're doing with intake, it's a built-for-purpose solution because there are other platforms out there that do intake at the corporate level, but they're not really good at it in the way that legal needs it to be. So oddly enough, having a fit-for-purpose solution on intake like Tonkean then allows you to take all of your other solutions that are fit for purpose, but connect them in a way where you can leverage those platforms optimally without having to retool.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Though I will note, Tonkean really, from a vertical solution standpoint, got our start in legal. But we have customers who are adopting Tonkean AI agents and the AI front door across legal, procurement, finance, IT, HR, and really kind of solves the navigation problem for requesters, right? Because we've all experienced this. Okay, I need something from somebody. I know I'm not supposed to just write an email. Let me open my Okta or my SSO environment because I know there's some kind of tool in here that I'm supposed to submit a request through, but there's 400 links in here, and I don't remember which one it is. The all-purpose front door is a revelation, right? Because you don't even need to know where the portal is, right? You can access it through Slack or Teams or email. It's a different paradigm.
I think it's one of the advantages of legal being so late to the technology world, right? Tonkean becomes an evangelical technology for the legal department. Yep. Because truly it enables the entire business. Because as you were saying, you may have started in legal, but it is applicable to the entire enterprise.
That's right.
And it's more modern, right? Because we were late, it's more modern.
I think another important facet of what you're saying, Connie, is legal is inherently cross-functional, right? So to the extent that you can have point solutions, we talk about the entire enterprise tech stack. It's about 300 plug-and-play integrations that we have. Most legal processes don't just involve legal. They involve sales. They involve IT. They involve procurement. They involve other business stakeholders, and they have their own tools and platforms as well. The critical thing is bringing everything into harmony.
One other comment I would make, Ron. One of the questions that we get a lot at legalops.com is, how do you build a technology roadmap? What does a technology roadmap look like? And I think these days, you've got to look at your data structures, your data architecture, something we haven't talked on. I know, Jennifer, you might want to tap into that a little bit. But, beyond that, if you're not looking at intake and you're not looking at how your systems integrate or how you integrate all of them as a foundational part of your architecture and your roadmap, you've got a real problem.
Yep, agree.
Right. No, and just to dovetail on that, Jeff, I thought Connie might be able. She spoke a little bit about data a little bit earlier in our conversation, but I thought we could speak a little bit more on the importance of this data, to have the seamless, reliable access to it, and how your systems integrate, all within the legal ops department, and then perhaps the whole company.
Well, it's the foundation upon which all of the technologies are built. If your data is lousy and you throw technology over the top, all you do is speed up a lousy result. And so you really do need to spend some time and make sure that your data is clean. Garbage in, garbage out is what they've always said.
You need to have data. I mean, that's the biggest issue. It's just having the data, right? So I do an entire presentation on optimizing your legal department. And that really starts with intake. So 15, 20 years ago, I created an intake mechanism that was purely manual using a spreadsheet with a bunch of drop downs to collect information on what matters were my team handling, who was handling them, how long did it take to complete them, what was the complexity of the matter, and a few other data points. And then I would pull all of that in, compile it, and then crunch the data, mostly manual, to understand who was doing what. And from that, we could then come back to that point that, hey, look, I've got some of the most senior legal people working on the most basic stuff like NDAs, and look how much of their time it takes up. And then I can also find where the expertise is. I have a lot of members of my team, mostly lawyers, but sometimes not, that are handling complex open source matters or other complex matters or issues within a particular vertical. Maybe it was storage technology versus middleware. It allowed me and the management team to know where to go to when matters came up quickly. So to Connie's point, you have to have clean data, but just collecting it and having access to it from the intake is absolutely critical. In fact, on our maturity model, one of the core elements is data and document management.
Right. And we have a question from the audience that kind of fits right into this conversation. How do you blend your legal tech stack with your enterprise tech stack while keeping data from not intermingling within the enterprise?
So I would answer with a few points from Tonkin's perspective here. I think it starts with the architecture and the intent behind the architecture. So the goal isn't to merge data sets, it's to connect processes securely across them. So integration at the workflow and metadata level, not necessarily at the data storage level, if that makes sense. So the systems stay sovereign, the context travels where it needs to, when it needs to. That connective layer should orchestrate across systems rather than centralizing everything, with robust access controls that are instrumented through orchestration and through sort of experience meta layers that sit on top of your platforms the same way they would function if the employees were trying to access it directly, right? So APIs with scoped permissions, role-based access controls, a policy informed data segregation, and that's really where orchestration platforms can help, right? Wrapping around the tools, coordinating the actions, synchronizing the data and the status updates right across systems without having to blend the underlying data necessarily.
And doing it real time. I mean, think about it back in the day, right? There is potentially a compliance matter that comes into one legal group. They send an email over to somebody in HR because it has to do with an employee and they need to collect data there. There's a technology potential issue that because it went out in email, or maybe there was a system. So now we need to send an email over to 3 people in IT. We need to send something maybe over to litigation because maybe they need to look at it. And then we're going to need to collect a lot of data from our e-discovery team. You know, Matt, what you just described now, in one fell swoop, we can have an entire view of all of the issues, get the people involved, and pull the data sets together like that, identify the problem, identify the complexity, and more importantly, the severity of the problem, and act immediately. I mean, it's a radical change in responsiveness and being able to tackle critical problems as opposed to stuff that we can just be like, oh, that's a trivial, forget it.
Right. All right, well, it looks like we're close to be out of time for today. I just wanted to go around and ask our panelists for maybe their top takeaway from today's survey and our conversation. Connie, can we start with you?
Yeah, you know what I would say generally? This is one of the most hopeful sets of data that I have seen in a very long time. All of the indicators are going up. And it looks like we have really hit the tipping point in terms of running legal like a business.
Well
Jeff?
put.
Jeff, you want?
Takeaway?
I would say that the opportunity is still great. As directionally correct as the data is, the opportunity is still there. And, pursuing technologies like Tonkean, understanding orchestration and agents, it can be a game changer. It's clear that the leading companies are doing it, but there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and people do need to make the time to investigate the opportunity.
Yeah, I would sort of point to kind of the two sides of the coin here, right? So the on the one side, how striking or how universal the pain still is. Even sophisticated teams struggle with a lot of the same things: visibility, manual work, stakeholder adoption. The encouraging part is that people aren't just talking about automation anymore, right? They're talking about they're up-leveling their thinking into designing better experiences for the business. And that's a big evolution, right? From enforcing processes to earning participation. It's a different mindset. So.
Well, that's perfect. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. I wanted to thank Connie, Jeff, and Matt for your thoughts, as well as our entire audience for their time and joining us today. As a reminder, the presentation and State of Legal Operations text survey is downloadable, and you'll receive, I believe, a link to the ebook for tomorrow, as well as the on-demand, the link to listen on demand. And on behalf of Tonkean and Corporate Counsel Business Journal and LegalOps.com, I want to thank you for attending and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hosting CCPJ. All right.